Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Tribble Timewarp. It is the 8th of August 2012 and I have nothing to do with this. No, really. I didn't break quarantine protocol, so how did these get onto the starbase? Yes, this is the effect of the latest special starbase project. You can, if you are so inclined, infest your starbase with Tribbles and Nemo Jones, who will very happily give you a background lecture on Tribbles and explain the basics of Tribble breeding, although to be frank, most people work that out the moment they are foolish enough to leave the Tribble and food in close proximity. Other than that, we've had quite a lot of bug fixes. A few missions have had various waypoints added, so you're much less likely to get lost and spend significant amounts of time blundering around the map looking for your objectives. The follow target camera now stays as the follow target camera. It doesn't mysteriously switch itself over to free camera if you simultaneously use the mouse and tab through enemies. And generally there is so much to cover over the last few days that I'll just link to the patch notes and confine this video to dealing with some of the main items. First on the agenda of those main items is the changes to the DOF system. The personnel officer, that lovely chap on the left, will now sell you duty officers of varying qualities for fleet credit. Basic white quality officers cost you about 500 a time, and it scales up to the merely eye-wateringly expensive if you want purple grade from there. In addition, you can now turn in excess commendation XP in a category for fleet marks. 10,000 XP in a single category is needed, over and above the 100,000 to hit tier 4. And you get 75 fleet marks. If you are lucky enough to crit the mission, you get 100. As far as crit chance goes, it seems as though the quality of the officer you send matters at least as much, if not more than, the traits they have. You can see the effect it's having as I cycle through various officers. I don't have a purple grade officer with the full whack, but you can see there, despite the Vulcan having a better trait setup, he actually has a lower chance of a critical success. So make of that what you will. Your best bet really is just purple grade and then squeeze on as many traits as you can. As far as I can tell, each improvement in the quality level is the equivalent essentially of 2 desirable traits. Curiously, when I got back out onto the main disco deck, the Tribbles had all vanished. I'm assuming that's a bug, since it's highly unlikely the AI actually heard my opinion of that project. At least the Klingons get to have Targ on their base. Catch those, fry them up, I'm sure they're quite tasty. Another new mission you have, if you're in the duty officer frame of mind, is that you can now split high grade duty officers into 3 lower grade ones, and you don't even have to use a chainsaw. This is essentially the reassign underperforming officers mission that we've had ever since the start, but run in reverse and only half as efficient. Bear in mind that you need 6 low grades to get a single high grade, and a high grade splits to 3 low grades. So what you cannot do is simply bounce officers backwards and forwards using these 2 missions until you happen to roll up an officer you like. At least you can do that, but of course you will very quickly run your duty officer pool down to nothing. There are better uses if you intend to just burn officers that way, whether you recycle them for dilithium, use the execute for incompetence mission to get rid of them on the Klingon side, or just start donating them to duty officer projects on the starbase is entirely down to you. But frankly, they're all going to be more efficient options than doing the grand reassignment merry-go-round. Additionally, it's now going to be somewhat easier to get hold of turrets on the Federation side. Instead of having to acquire the prototype plans and then build them, we're now apparently going to have the option to buy them directly, and maybe even to craft phaser and or disruptor turrets, side appropriate of course, phasers for Starfleet, disease for the KDF. I will try and find out what the required materials are for a future time warp, and I will let you know. From a combat standpoint, however, the big change is that mines aren't quite the joke they've been prior to this. Now, one of the reasons I've hung off doing this video for bit is because I needed to get some time with mine layers on holodeck, because it had been at least 18 months since I last seriously used them. However, to go over the changes very, very quickly, the number of mines you are deploying at any given moment has generally been reduced. Photon, quantum, transphasic and chronoton mines, and plasmas, all of which obviously deploy 5 mines on a normal spread, 8 on a rank 1 spread, 12 on rank 2, 16 on rank 3, now deploy 4 mines baseline, 7 on a rank 1 dispersal pattern, 10 on a rank 2 and 14 on a rank 3. Cryptic have upped the damage of each individual mine to compensate for this, so you didn't actually lose anything. Indeed, arguably on the dispersal patterns you have gained. And then they applied what amounted to a 25% damage increase for everything except transphasics and tricobalts. Tricobalts got a 10% increase in their damage output. Transphasics are a little odd. They got a nerf down to 70% of baseline damage, but the bleed through has been upped to 80%. So, under the current system, you do baseline damage against bare hull and 40% against a shielded target. Under the new system, you'll do 70% of baseline damage against unshielded hull and 56% against shields. So transphasics, while they are now worse against regular opponents, are significantly better, on the order of a, 25% boost, at breaking through a shielded tank. Indeed, that's 56% to 40%. That's considerably more than 20%. It's more like 30 to 35%, just doing the maths very, very quickly. I have to wonder, however, given the traditional use of cannons and or beam weapons to break down shields and expose hull from mines and torpedoes, whether it might not have been more useful for transphasics to be set at 100% baseline damage and just set a 56% bleed through, which has about the same effect. Additionally, tricobalt mines now make use of the dispersal patterns. Previously, of course, it didn't matter what kind of dispersal pattern you had lined up. You would always just get 1 mine every 60 seconds. I can only assume these things were the size of a shuttlecraft and they were being chucked out of the shuttle bays. Happily, your crew are now getting better at this. All that weightlifting practice has paid off, and dispersal patterns now add an extra mine per rank. Pattern Alpha chucks them out in sequence with a 5-second delay between each mine, which is a little long for my taste. I've been finding it hard to get all 2, 3 or 4 mines lined up on target, and because there aren't very many, I've always felt that tricobalt mines were better used as essentially time-delayed bombs rather than area denial in the traditional sense of a mine. Dispersal pattern beta, however, chucks all 2, 3 or 4 tricobalts out of the back simultaneously. In effect, this is your primary offensive use of the power, and since tricobalts are on a 60-second cooldown, and dispersal patterns have had their cooldowns significantly reduced to 30 seconds at rank 9, they were 45 seconds, you can now effectively maintain dispersal pattern on permanent standby for tricobalts. The mutual cooldown for mines has dispersal patterns has also been reduced. It is now 15 seconds rather than 30, as you can see here. In effect, they have leveled things with torpedoes, so it's now a little more even than it used to be. Photon mines have had their stealth rating equipped. They are less likely to get spotted and therefore shot down by point defense. They will trigger at 3 kilometers rather than 2. So in effect they are much better as booby traps. Quantum mines have been made much more aggressive. Their speed has been increased from 25 to 45, so good luck outrunning those without evasive manoeuvres or some sort of speed boost on standby. They detonate at 700 meters rather than 400, and the blast is now 1500 meters in radius rather than 1000. So if you happen to have a tight packed group of enemies and they blunder into a dispersal pattern of quantum mines, yeah, it gets messy. Plasma mines. The dot effect has been increased by 50% duration. They nerfed each individual tick slightly, but it's still a damage boost. Hazard emitters clears it as per before. Chronoton mines, the chance to apply the slow is now up. It is now an 80% chance rather than a 33% chance. So if you're running, say, the Starbase blockade mission, there is something to be said for dropping a dispersal pattern of chronoton mines in the path of your opponents and just slowing them down significantly, either before or after you whack them with tractor repulsors and shove them away from the freighter. Obviously, this also comes in handy if you are trying to kill a bird of prey or an escort. Slower targets are, of course, easier targets. Let me see what else we have. The transphasic cluster torpedo. Again, the number of mines it produces has been nerfed. It's now 10 rather than 12. The 40% bleed through is as it was on holodeck, but against that they haven't nerfed the damage. So it's perhaps a little less potent than it was. However, they've also tweaked the behaviour so it is now considerably more reliable. Ladies and gentlemen, mines are no longer a joke. It will be interesting to see what happens with the Gorn, because of course they use photon mines. So we shall see. Tailing a Zealand or a Draguris cruiser could be about to get considerably riskier. That is pretty much it as far as the headline changes for the current round of Tribble patches go. I need to swing by Memory Alpha at some point. I'll do that in the next video. And if you're still around and watching, and assuming there is a next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you then.